She stopped praying 6 weeks ago, not because she wanted to, not because she stopped believing, but because somewhere along the way, the prayers started feeling like letters she was sending to an address that no longer existed. She still went through the motions for a while. She'd kneel beside her bed the way she had since she was 12 years old. She'd close her eyes. She'd begin, "Lord, Lord," and then nothing, just the sound of her own breathing and the heavy, humiliating feeling that no one was on the other end. So she stopped, and the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was loud in the worst possible way. Because now, on top of everything she was already carrying, the pressure, the uncertainty, the loneliness she couldn't explain to anyone, she had a new fear sitting in her chest like a stone. What if God was never really there? What if I just convinced myself he was? Her name is Zoe. She's 26 years old. She grew up in the church. She led worship for 3 years. She has a Bible with highlighted verses and sticky notes on half the pages. She is not someone who walked away from faith carelessly. She is someone who tried everything she knew and felt nothing back. And if you have ever sat where Zoe is sitting right now, then this video is for you. Because what Zoe is experiencing is not proof that God is gone. It is a symptom of something specific. Something John's chapter 15 names with surgical precision. And by the end of today, we are going to trace exactly where the silence started. And exactly how to find the voice again. Welcome to Verse Unearthed. Today we are doing something different. We are not starting with a teaching and working toward an application. We are starting inside the crisis, inside Zoe's silence. And we are going to work our way back. Back through the decisions, the drifts, the small disconnections that led her here. And we are going to let John 15 be the map that shows us exactly where she lost the signal. Because here is the truth I want you to hold on to from the very first minute. God's silence is rarely what it feels like. Most of the time, what we experience as God going quiet is actually something far more specific and far more fixable than we realize. Let's go back to where it began. If you asked Zoe when things started to feel distant, she wouldn't be able to give you an exact date. That's the thing about spiritual drift. It rarely announces itself. There's no alarm, no moment where you consciously decide to disconnect. It happens the way a boat leaves its mooring in a slow current. Quietly, gradually, until one day you look up and the shore is nowhere in sight. But if you trace it back carefully, the way a doctor traces symptoms to a root cause, you can usually find the turning point. For Zoe, it was about 8 months ago. Her life had gotten busy in the way that young adulthood gets busy. A demanding new job, a friendship that fell apart badly, a season of anxiety that she managed mostly by staying in motion. She didn't stop reading her Bible. She didn't stop going to church. But somewhere in the busyness, something shifted. Prayer moved from conversation to checklist. Church moved from community to obligation. Scripture moved from living water to familiar wallpaper, present but unnoticed. She was still doing everything right, but she was doing it alone. And this is precisely the condition Jesus describes in John 15. Not dramatic rebellion, not willful rejection, just gradual separation. The branch, still shaped like a branch, is still occupying the space where it used to be attached, but no longer drawing life from the vine. John 15:6. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers, until the color is gone and the life is gone, and all that's left is the shape of what used to be. That was Zoe 8 months ago. She didn't know it yet, but the withering had already begun. Here's where we need to slow down, because Zoe was doing all the things we typically associate with a healthy spiritual life: prayer, church, Bible reading. So how could she be disconnected? The answer is in a word most of us have never examined closely enough: abide. Jesus uses this word, the Greek word meno, 10 times in John 15. 10 times in one passage. When a teacher repeats something that many times, it is not accidental. He is trying to stop us from skipping past it. He knows that this word, if we truly understand it, changes everything. Meno means to remain. to dwell, to make your permanent home in. And here is what it does not mean. It does not mean performing spiritual activities. It does not mean consistency in religious habits. It does not mean showing up to the right places and saying the right things and checking the right boxes. All of those things can exist without abiding. Zoe is living proof. Think about a marriage. You can live in the same house as someone, eat at the same table, and sleep in the same bed, and be profoundly, achingly disconnected from them. The proximity is there. The routine is there. But the presence, the real, attentive, vulnerable, open presence, is gone. And both people feel it, even if neither one says it. That is what Zoe had with God. She maintained the proximity. She kept the routine. But she had stopped being present. She had stopped showing up as herself, with her actual fears, her actual doubts, her actual longings. She had replaced real communion with spiritual performance. And eventually, the performance ran out of fuel. John 15:4. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself, unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me, by itself. That is the key phrase. Zoe had been trying to sustain her faith by herself, using her own discipline, her own willpower, her own emotional reserves. And those reserves had finally hit zero. She hadn't lost God. She had lost her grip on the source. Now, let's talk about the silence, because this is the part that scares people most. Not the dryness, not the routine, but the silence. The feeling that you pray and nothing comes back. Zoe described it to her journal one night like this. It's like calling a number and hearing it ring and ring and ring, and no one answers. And the longer it rings, the more I wonder if I dialed wrong, or if the number was ever real. I want to be honest with you about this. That feeling is real. It is not weakness. It is not spiritual failure. And it is not evidence that God has abandoned you. But I also want to show you something that took Zoe a long time to see. John 15:7. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. Read that carefully. If you abide. If his words abide in you. There is a condition here. Not a punitive condition. God is not withholding himself as punishment, but a relational one. Connection requires two participants. And when one participant has retreated into performance rather than presence, into habit rather than hunger, the conversation becomes one-sided. Not because God stopped speaking, but because we stopped listening in a way that costs us something. Here is a question Zoe had to sit with. When did I last come to God with something I was genuinely afraid to say? Not a rehearsed prayer, not the right words in the right order, but the raw, uncurated thing. The doubt she hadn't admitted, the anger she thought she shouldn't feel, the question she was afraid would make her sound like she didn't believe. Because that is where real prayer lives. In John 15:15, just a few verses later, Jesus says, "No longer do I call you servants, but I have called you friends." Friends don't perform for each other. Friends tell each other the truth. Friends bring the mess. The silence Zoe experienced was not God retreating. It was the echo of her own performance bouncing back to her unanswered. Because performance, however sincere, does not travel the same channel as presence, she needed to stop managing the conversation and start having it. It happened on a Thursday night that Zoe did not expect to be significant. She was in her apartment, late, exhausted. She had planned to do her usual Bible reading, flip to the passage she was supposed to be in, read the chapters, check the box, go to bed. But that night, something in her stopped. She sat there with the Bible closed on her lap, and she just stopped pretending. She didn't open to a passage. She didn't begin with thanksgiving the way she'd been taught. She just spoke, out loud, to the silence of her apartment, to the God she wasn't sure was there. I don't know if you're listening. I don't know if I believe the same things I used to believe. I'm exhausted and I'm lonely and I feel like I've been talking to a wall for months, but I don't know where else to go. She stopped. The apartment was quiet. And then something shifted. She said later that it wasn't a voice, it wasn't a vision, it was more like a warmth, a presence. The way a room changes quality when someone you love walks into it. She couldn't prove it, she couldn't explain it, but it was there. She opened her Bible. It fell to John 15, and she read it. Not as a student, not as a worshipper performing devotion, but as a person who was desperate and honest and willing to be wrong about everything she thought she knew. I am the vine, you are the branches. And for the first time in 8 months, she didn't read past it. She stopped, and she asked, what does that actually mean for me, right now, tonight? This is what John 15 was waiting to show her. Jesus says in verse 9, as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. Not. Abide in your spiritual consistency. Not. Abide in your track record. Not. Abide in how well you've been doing lately. Abide in my love. The foundation of abiding is not your performance. It is His love. You do not return to God by cleaning yourself up first. You return by simply turning, by bringing the honest, broken, doubting, exhausted version of yourself and saying, I'm here. I don't have it together, but I'm here. That is not weak faith. That is the beginning of real faith. Because a branch doesn't earn its place on the vine. It simply belongs there. That is where it was designed to live. And when a branch that has been lying on the ground is grafted back in, when the connection is restored, the life begins to flow again. Not because the branch deserved it, but that is what the vine does. It gives life to whatever is attached to it. Zoe had spent 8 months trying to earn the connection. That Thursday night, she stopped trying to deserve it and just came back. And the vine received her. If Zoe's story is your story, if you are sitting in the silence right now, wondering where the warmth went, I want to give you the same path back that she found. Rooted directly in John 15. Step 1. Come honestly, not perfectly. John 15:15. Jesus calls you a friend, not a servant. Friends don't have to arrive polished. The first step back to the vine is not a better prayer. It is an honest one. Tell Him exactly where you are. The doubt, the anger, the distance. He already knows it. Saying it out loud is not for His information. It is for your return. Step 2. Let His word live in you again. John 15:7. If my words abide in you, not just pass through you, abide in you. Take one passage, even one verse, and carry it through your entire day, not as a task, as a companion. Let it sit with you on the commute, at the desk, in the quiet. Let it shape what you think before you respond. This is how the vine's life begins to move again, through the channel of His word, reopened and active. Step 3. Obey the next small thing. John 15:10. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You just need to obey the next thing. The phone call you've been avoiding, the forgiveness you've been withholding, the honesty you've been swallowing. Each act of obedience clears the line. It is not earning, it is aligning. And alignment lets the life flow. Step 4. Receive His love as the ground you stand on. Many people in spiritual drought are trying to generate love for God as the starting point. But John 15 reverses that. His love comes first. John 15:16. You did not choose me, but I chose you. You don't need to work your way back to being chosen. You already are. Rest in that. Let it be the soil your roots go down into before you do anything else. Step 5. Don't go back alone. Hebrews 10:24-25. Stay connected to other believers. Zoe had been isolating without realizing it, managing her spiritual life privately, carrying her doubts in silence, never letting anyone close enough to see the dryness. Community is not a luxury. It is part of how the vine sustains the branches. We carry each other. Let someone carry you. Zoe still has hard days. She still has moments when the silence creeps back in and she has to choose, deliberately and sometimes painfully, to return to the vine instead of retreating into performance. But something is fundamentally different now. She knows the difference between proximity and presence. She knows that faith is not a feeling she has to sustain on her own. It is a connection she has to keep choosing. And she knows that on the days she doesn't feel anything, the vine has not moved. She has simply drifted. And drifting can be corrected. The branch can always return. That is the mercy at the heart of John 15. Jesus did not deliver this teaching to perfect disciples. He delivered it to men who would scatter within hours, who would deny him before sunrise, who would hide behind locked doors while their hope lay in a tomb. He gave it to people who were about to fail in the most spectacular ways. And he said, "Abide in me. Do not perform for me. Not earn your way back to me, not being stronger than you are. Just stay. Come back. Remain." If you are in the silence right now, this is what I want to leave you with. The silence is not the end of the story. It is a symptom, and symptoms have causes, and causes have solutions. The cause is disconnection. The solution is return. And return doesn't require anything from you except the willingness to come back. The vine is still there. It has never stopped being there. And it is carrying, right now, more than enough life for every branch that chooses to stay attached. Come back to the vine. The voice you've been missing is still speaking. You just have to get close enough to hear it. If this reached the part of you that has been silent, type in the comments right now, "I'm coming back to the vine." Let that be your declaration. Let that be the moment the drift stops and the return begins. And if you know someone sitting in their own silence right now, someone who has stopped praying, stopped hoping, stopped believing God can hear them, share this with them today. You might be the reason they find their way back. Here on Verse Unearthed, we dig into Scripture until it finds us where we actually live. If that's what you're looking for, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what we unearth next. I'll see you in the next one.